I'm going to be talking this morning about the hierarchy as a source of energy. But before I do, I just had to share something that I learned recently about Arizona. I was watching some local news and I had to replay it several times because we can do that now with TV. You know, we can back it up and back it up, back it up. It's great, except when I go into the car and listen to Sirius XM and my mind is wandering and I reach down to say, oh, let me rewind this. And, oh, I can't do that. Anyway, this is a story. This was a representative from the Northern Arizona Museum up in Flagstaff. And they were showing us this little devil tooth of a shark. This shark is 260 million years old. The tooth was 260 million years old. Now, you know, in the past, my former husband was with the Smithsonian Institute, and so we studied, he let me study with him, diligently fossils, and back in the Pliocene and Pleistocene and other scenes, you know, ancient times. And I was always interested in shark teeth because when we were living in Sarasota, we had a lot of fossilized shark teeth that would, you know, come up on the shores of the beach, of the ocean. And I was always fascinated, so that was my study. Fossilized shark teeth and echinoids and things like that. So this is why this program really caught my attention. And what this representative from the Northern Museum of Arizona said was that the northern part of Arizona was all covered in water, in the ocean water at one time. And then she kind of corrected herself and said, well, all of Arizona was, but that the water was shallow. And I never read that anywhere, that the ocean itself in Arizona was shallow. But to see this beautiful little tooth, 260 million years old, and they have it preserved in a little vial, and the vial had some chemical, something or other in it, and they're not allowing the public to see it, but they showed it on this TV program, and I was just thrilled. And they're thrilled too, obviously, because it's their field, but it was quite remarkable. So our little Arizona, look at that. You know, we used to be an ocean with sharks. Okay, so this morning I want to talk about the hierarchy as a center of energy. The Ageless Wisdom teaching is a most practical and deep teaching. So I am resourcing the Ageless Wisdom teaching this morning to share what we're being taught about hierarchy. These great ones throughout the ages have actually incarnated in different countries all over the world to bring inspiration of the teaching to all of us, to all of humanity. It is out there, and there are seekers searching. When we hear people say, well, I'm searching for the meaning of life, for example, what they're really saying is they are searching for the teaching. And so these great ones throughout the millennia, throughout ages, have given us the teaching in different forms, from oral teaching to written teaching now. And now we're moving back, I think, into the oral teaching again by being able to place our lectures and so forth on YouTube, so that these seekers can find the teaching and ultimately recognize and learn what their purpose in life is about. The purpose of the teaching then is to inspire humanity in such a way that they're going to understand the real purpose of life, and live that purpose in the most powerful way possible. See, sometimes people, once they find the teaching, they're so enamored with the words and the concepts that they immerse themselves into the intellectual part of the teaching, but they stay stuck there. What they need to know is, and I found this out myself because I became immersed in, the knowledge. But once you begin to absorb and assimilate the knowledge, then it begins to express itself through your day-to-day life. And through that expression, your consciousness opens up. And as your consciousness expands, you learn that what we have studied in the blue books and red books and various colored books, that's just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. Then we move into, our consciousness eventually moves into that spiritual triad, into the higher strata or spheres of the subtle worlds. And it is there we really begin to realize what the teaching is trying to convey to our little minds. And that's when our consciousness truly begins to expand. And we get a little frustrated with this planet and that we have found ourselves here once again. But now there's a balance. See, that balance comes from our contact with greater light. And that greater light is the light of hierarchy, the light of the great ones that are illuminating the higher worlds and permeating our consciousness in such a way that when we wake up in the morning, for example, we see life in a whole different vista. And it reminds me in a weird way, perhaps, of the density of the gravity of matter. It's like when my husband and I were out in the boat out in the Gulf of Mexico for like 2 or 3 days, and then we come back in on land, and we'd have to get out of that boat and walk on land. And there's no buoyancy on land. You're just boom, right? And sometimes that's what it's like to wake up in the morning, is boom. Because there's such buoyancy, such beauty when our consciousness is functioning in the higher worlds, in the classes of the ashrams, and being in the light of these great, wise beings. It's so magnificent, it's so beautiful. And then boom. So we take sometimes 15 to 30 minutes in meditation. And the meditation realigns us to that experience of the inner planes, that realigns us to that experience of being part of the ashram. And now we have balance. So we don't become so immersed in the world that the day-to-day activities of our responsibilities don't, like Pac-Man, eat us up. Now we have a greater resource, and that greater resource is hierarchy. There are some human beings who have been able to penetrate into that sphere of hierarchy, but we are told it is not possible without due preparation, without labor, without striving, without transfiguration and sacrifice. So these are the things that are necessary for us to engage in if we want to have these magnificent experiences so that life really now takes on a whole different perspective, a different meaning, and we understand the purpose of our life. Preparation requires many incarnations of training. So, taking a 3-hour credit course at college is not going to get it. Or coming to a few lectures or meditating for a few months or years is not complete training. The teaching tells us that it takes and requires many incarnations of training. So this is why we don't want to blow our life. See, we want to be so grateful that we, through our searching, found the teaching right now, here and now. Whether you're listening to this video for the first time, learning about the teaching, or like some of us here in the room, we've been studying the teaching for only 20 years, or 30 years, or maybe a little bit longer in my case. We want to stay focused so that in our next incarnation and next to next, our consciousness becomes more and more refined. And in that refinement, this is what I mean by refined. I'm never going to get to all this talk, but we'll do the best we can here. That refinement means increased sensitivity. This is what true psychism is all about, is increasing sensitivity to the higher worlds, to where there's no longer a block between this world and the astral world, or this world and the higher mental world, or the supramundane world. There's no longer a block, because our system, our human constitution, is so refined, so beautiful, so pure, that we can handle higher energy, higher frequencies of energy. We can assimilate colors that are not yet discovered in the dense world. We can hear sounds that our human ears cannot hear because of this lack of sensitivity. We can actually hear the voice of our guardian angel, the solar angel. It's no longer a concept or a feeling. Now it is a literal experience. And not just one sentence. But when you have a question formulated in your mind, or a thought that has become a thought form, and you need help, your guardian angel gives you an audible answer, just like we can hear one another this morning. It's always there, it's just our sensitivity isn't. So, this is why the teaching says preparation requires many incarnations of training, and we are well on our way. This training includes a process of sublimation, transformation, and transfiguration. To understand these three words, just go into the teaching. You'll find about the definitions and the disciplines of purification and transformation and transfiguration in the Agni Yoga teachings, in the teachings of Torkham Sridharayan, in the teachings of Alice Bailey and the Tibetan, in the teachings of Blavatsky, Helena Blavatsky. They're all there. But it requires purification. It requires dedication and striving. It requires living a life of selfless service. There's another word for selfless service. It's self-immolation. I-M-M-O-L-A-T-I-O-N. It's a very old word. Self-immolation is the same as selfless service. To travel the path of hierarchy requires one to live a most sacrificial life, a life of spiritual tension. Now, what is this path called, such a path called? It's called the narrow path, or the razor's edge path. Once a person enters into the sphere of hierarchy, that person turns into a dynamo of energy for the betterment of life and for the evolution of humanity. The teaching tells us that the hierarchy is a great center of energy due to certain facts. For example, and there's 5 examples here. The first one is that all of the members of hierarchy are so purified in their vehicles that they radiate their innermost center of life energy. And, listen to this, they channel planetary, solar, and cosmic energy. That's what these great enlightened beings, these great sages, have the capability of doing, and they do it. The second one, they work and live in the energy field of Shambhala. Now, why even talk about things like this? Because these great ones are our heroes. They represent what we can be, what we're going to be if we stay and travel on this razor's edge path. They are also free from personal karma. Imagine. The fourth, they work with the plan and ideas, which are great sources of energy. They work in the fourth and third and second. Just a minute, I wanted to show you this diagram. We had this little connection this morning with the guys and myself to see if I could do this. This is the diagram of how they work in the fourth, third, and second cosmic etheric planes, which is essentially from here on up. This kind of diagram, I know I'm moving you around, Terry, I'll try to hold it still. This whole diagram represents the planes and subplanes of the human constitution. Starts at the most dense level and then goes up the ladder of increasing light, increasing sensitivity and refinement. And so it is here, from here all the way up to here, in this realm that the hierarchy functions. And this realm is called the fourth, which would be here, the fourth, the third, and the first. I'm sorry, second, the fourth, third, and second cosmic. I can't really see here. Okay, cosmic etheric planes, which are also known as the Buddhic and the monadic and the atmic planes, which are stupendous fields of energy. Thus, one of the greatest sources of energy is our hierarchy. Okay. Wasn't that fun? Hopefully everybody can see it. We have great turnout remotely today. Wow, I'm impressed. Thank you for joining us, by the way. So what is the hierarchy? The hierarchy is made of a group of men and women who have surpassed human evolution and released hidden energy, released their nucleus of energy from within. Same nucleus of energy we have, but it just isn't released yet. Their consciousness, their awareness, is to the human kingdom what ultrasonic waves are to common noise. Imagine, that's refinement. When we think ultrasonic waves are sound waves that have frequencies of the upper limit of the normal range of human hearing. So just think of this. I'm so not going to get through this talk, but I just want to share these ideas that I'm being flooded with here. That imagine, as we walk through our day-to-day life, that we have a refinement that can hear these ultrasonic waves, which come forth as ashramic teaching, because ashramic teaching occurs 24 hours, 7 days a week. Because we are able to put ourselves, our mind in a period of rest when we go to bed at night usually, then we might participate in 5 minutes of that class. And when we wake up in the morning, we may remember 2 seconds of what that 5 minutes produced. But as our consciousness becomes more and more refined, when we walk through that mud on the planet Earth, see, our consciousness is still learning and experiencing and becoming illuminated by the 24-hour classes taking place in the ashram. The common person will say, "This is nonsense," and I've heard them say that. Some family members, even, that's nonsense. But my retort to them is saying, but the hierarchy is not something you have to believe in. The hierarchy is. So you don't have to believe in it. It's okay. On the other hand, the more we think about hierarchy, the more we talk about hierarchy and study the principles of hierarchy, when we invoke a call to hierarchy, there is going to be a response. So, we want aspirants and disciples and initiates all over the world to think about and talk about and study hierarchy. So, when we invoke a call to them, there's going to be a response. So let us recognize the hierarchy as a fact. The great sage and member of hierarchy, one of them is Master Morya. And he states in the Agni Yoga book titled Hierarchy, this is what he says: "Thus only the chain of hierarchy will afford the possibility of ascent. Complete obedience leads to true creativeness, for when obedience guides the actions, power increases, and the pledge strains all forces." So what is meant by obedience according to the Master? The teaching describes obedience in this way. It says, one must obey before he hears the command. Every important command is first given on the subtle planes. But see, if we're not awake on the subtle planes, we're not going to hear the command. And if the teacher gives us a command, we're going to challenge that command and check our watches to see if we even have time to consider it. But as we increase our light and engage in purification and dedicate ourselves to this razor's edge path, We don't have to wait for, a direction or guidance from the earthly teacher. We'll all be ready, already engaged in obedience to the command of hierarchy. So every important command is first given on the subtle planes. If one is a disciple, he will not wait to hear it on the physical plane. This is what the teaching is telling us. Obeying the command before one hears it is testimony that one is awake on the higher planes, that he or she cooperates on higher planes of consciousness, and that he or she has a part in the work going on upon the higher planes. This is why Agni Yoga teaching particularly stresses, don't waste your time in arguing. They cannot hear. See, that hearing is not developed a psychic sensitivity yet to hear the command. They have hierarchy, so don't waste your time in arguing. This great sage also stated, how do men understand the law of hierarchy? How do they fulfill all the laws of life? How do they intensify in themselves the best striving? And his answer is, this is so beautiful. Verily, pleasure. Verily, the law of hierarchy is understood as one's own right. Verily, the law of hierarchy is one's own right. It is forgotten that a hierarch is a link of a spiritual chain, and it is such a one who fulfills the will of a higher one, just like what Richard was reading earlier in the verse this morning. Only thus can one respond to the higher assignment. Only thus can one fulfill the trust and accumulate the fires in the chalice. And this is found in Hierarchy, the book Hierarchy, Sutra 35. Helena Rourke, in writing about the hierarchy, says that hierarchy is a sacrament. This is why we look at our sanctuary here and say this is a sacrament. Why? Because it has been dedicated to the hierarchy, to be used for the plan and purpose of hierarchy and Shambhala. So she says hierarchy is a sacrament. And then she wrote, today I write using the words of the great teacher about the sacrament of hierarchy. Imagine writing. Imagine writing about the sacrament of hierarchy using the words of the great teacher. She says, truly this is a sacrament because it is based upon the immutable and exact law of the cosmic magnet, which leads all beings to perfection. It is necessary to realize the hierarchy clearly, precisely, and broadly as the only way to progress. Now, this isn't rhetoric for her. This is exact knowledge. Exact knowledge is experience. She goes on to say, we must realize the whole chain of hierarchy, holding strongly to our nearest link, the earthly teacher. She says, woe to the one who tries to skip this link and thus loses his or her connection. I added her. Thus loses her connection. It is impossible to catch up again, as the rhythm of the movement of the whole chain will carry away the saving link. grave indeed is this error. How much time will be lost in trying to recover the vibrating link which responds to the call? But the new link will be different in sequence and tension, because the previous one has been carried away in the rhythmic striving of the whole hierarchical chain. There's so much I'd like to explain about this, but I only have 7 more pages left, and I'm on page 2. But I can say this much. We must take advantage of the moment. We must be grateful for the magnet pulling us to where we are today. And stop arguing through our Maya and glamours and illusions with this magnet that is a link in the chain of hierarchy, because something in our vibration was refined enough to be pulled to where it is today and be in resonance with that magnet. Now, if we lose our connection with that magnet, which is the link in the chain of hierarchy, that magnet is moving on, is going to increase its vibration and frequency. But we've lost it because we've been so immersed in our self-importance and needing to argue with the teaching. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. The saving link is, of course, our earthly teacher, and eventually one solar angel, once the consciousness becomes sensitive to the voice of the solar angel. Now we know the solar angel is a member of hierarchy, right? So once we have penetrated into the sphere of hierarchy, then our link with the hierarchy also includes the master and even higher kohans in the subjective ashram. The teachings indicate that the hierarchy radiates 7 main energies or rays through their groups of masters or disciples. I'm going to repeat this, okay? The teachings indicate that the hierarchy radiates 7 major or main energies or rays. It radiates 7 major or main rays through their groups of masters and disciples. So for the rest of this morning's talk, I'm going to share a very condensed view of the rays. So I'm going to have to further condense it. And I'm just going to stick with the 3 rays of aspects, ray 1, 2, and 3. But there are 7. So let's take a look at the energy of ray 1. The teachings tell us that this energy, being of a very high order, is contacted through the head center. This head center then is used as clear vision. So one whose head center is functioning, and this head center actually corresponds with the lotus in the higher mind, but also the 1,000-petaled lotus, all correspond to this head center. And as that head center, once your head center opens, for example, it doesn't all of a sudden, kaboom, it's open and we have this full blossoming. It's a process. But this energy, as the head center is opening, is used as clear vision, as dynamic power, a sense of timing. A sense of timing. I cannot say anything more. I have so much to share. But we'll get it on the etheric plane. How's that? Okay. Solitariness detachment, and singleness of purpose. Singleness of purpose. The head of the ashram, this first ray ashram, is Master Morya, who we are also told is the head of all esoteric schools which truly prepare, see, not all, but those esoteric schools who prepare an aspirant for ashramic contact and work. Actually, these qualities of the first ray energy are the expressions of 6 masters plus the head, the central one, that forms the nucleus of the first ray ashram. In other words, the first ray energy is distributed through 7 masters, and when you contact one of them, you can receive this special energy expressed by that master through the head center. Okay. Now, ray 2. The second source of hierarchical energy is the second ray ashram. The second ray energy can be expressed as divine love, radiance, attraction, the power to save, wisdom, and expansion or inclusiveness. It almost seems at odds, but as you expand, you include more and more and more. These 6 qualities are the expressions of 6 masters at the nucleus of the ashram, headed by the 7th, who represents the Christ consciousness. The consciousness of eternal striving for perfection and synthesis. The will for unification. The second ray ashram is a very strong influence upon humanity right now due to the many disciples who are in contact with it and who mostly work in the field of education. Education is based on the will to unify. See, this is the esoteric understanding of the true education, which is the will to unify. Now, of course, this energy can be found in all 7 fields of human endeavor. In politics, for example, the New Age education is clearly evident, and we're seeing this by movements that are going on in today's politics. In philosophy, we see many attempts for unification, but it can be seen very clearly in esoteric philosophy. In the arts, we see this will to unification strongly active. See how you can take this ray and it just floods the other rays of aspect and attribute, meaning all the fields of human endeavor. The color and the sound and the movement and the ideas and the visions of the Ray 2 ashram brings humanity into closer communication and unity. And now the third ray, the third source of hierarchical energy is the third ray ashram. We're going to go over. I hope you will let this happen. Okay. The third ray energy can be expressed in this way. The energy to manifest, to evolve, the energy for mental illumination, the energy that produces synthesis on the physical plane, the energy that urges scientific investigation, and the energy to balance. These 6 energies are released or used by 6 masters in the ashram, headed by the 7th, who embodies the energy of the will to evolution. The third ray ashram is headed by Master Rikotse, who is also called the Lord of Civilization. Contact with the field of energy of this ashram may be possible through abstract thinking, through culture, and especially through cultivating the related virtues, such as clear intellect, the capacity for concentration on philosophic studies, patience and caution, absence of the tendency to worry himself or others over trifles. Those are the virtues related, some of the virtues related to this ashram. When contacting the third ray ashramic energy, it creates great vision and striving and contact with abstract ideas to help resolve the problems of life. The third ray ashram, in a sense, guides and overshadows the remainder of the fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh ashrams. And here's a quote from the teaching. Those who do not approach this ashram with purified minds create great illusions and polluted thought forms, which stand as obstacles on the path of the evolution of humanity. The misuse of this energy particularly causes brain damage. I'm going to close there, but I would like just to make this comment about this particular quote. The brain damage, and so forth. This is why we have stewards of the teaching. This is why we have the earthly teacher that warns us. And if you read Agni Yoga, in various places, you can do if you want to do something this afternoon, go to the Agni Yoga Society's website. They have a beautiful search engine there, and put in the search word warnings and discover all the warnings and why warnings are given by the teacher to the student. Essentially, it is to protect the teaching, but to protect ourselves. What is happening that I'm seeing, however, is that our intellect is building our egoism, and our egoism becomes blind to these warnings. And our ego says, oh, crazy things that it says. And then we step off into the world of chaos. But I've been around the teaching for so long, I have seen the damage that is being done to the brain because of people engaging in wrong discipline, wrong meditation. It's like there's a wonderful book written by Torkham, The Science of Meditation. And there's a chapter in there where he gives us the warning signs of meditation. See, this is not your, feel-good kind of meditation. This is active seed thought meditation. And he said, you've got to be careful if you're going to engage in these kind of meditations. You have to do this and don't do that and that. And people kind of negate that. And what happens, they have brain damage. They end up with brain tumors. I know this beautiful, beautiful woman who was a teacher in the teachings that engaged in long, long hours of meditation. Ended up with brain cancer, and they cut off the top of her skull to open it up because there's so much swelling of the brain. See, that's dramatic. I know of people who have been put in a mental institution because they will not follow the warnings of the teacher, and they have damaged their brain So they're put in a mental health institution. So we're given these magnificent teachings. So just follow the teaching, and you'll be fine. So don't let our egoism blind us to these beautiful teachings of hierarchy. Okay, that's it.